Hare Krishna. I want to welcome this afternoon Dharmabhavana Prabhu, who I met, I suppose, in 2006. So it's been a few years in Dallas. And so I know him from Dallas, but I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more about you as we talk today. So welcome, Prabhu. Thank you for coming. Thank you. So, how long have you lived in Dallas? Because as I said, I moved there in 2006, left in 2013. So, how long have you and your family been there?
I first was a Brahmacari in Austin and Houston. So in Houston, there was a lot of reorganization taking place. I came to Dallas, and I think it was very late 78.
Yes.
And so I've been here in Dallas ever since. It's my main base. Jagavan and my wife came here in 1979. So we've been here all this time as our place of residence.
So you've been did you know so you met soon after and you fell in love and got married?
Yeah, what happened is I went to Fiji for some time.
Okay.
About 4 or 5 months, and then we were married in Fiji. We had a big temple wedding. A couple of devotees were married also.
Yes.
And then this is in 79. She came in late 79 or 80 to Dallas. So after that, so some things were happening at that time. And in Dallas, there was about 200 plus devotees here. Many were new, come from other places. They were attracted to the new management, kind of a hope for the future. And then after a couple of years, I was able to took up the responsibility of community relations director and light membership director. And Jagavani was really good helping with this. We developed like a mailing list of different people inviting to the Sunday feast, because at the Sunday feast at that time, there were only 4, 5, 6 people coming. And so we started meeting people in the temple, getting their phone numbers, addresses, and making a mailing list so we can mail out invitations for Janmashtami, Vyas Puja, Ram Navami, Gaur Purnima, the major festivals. So I've been in Dallas all this time. What happened is, I'll ask a question for you.
Okay, yeah.
When I was very young, maybe 10, 12 years old, I was going to Catholic school. And in Catholic school, we didn't have a very deep of understanding of spirituality. It was more like you go to school, most of your teachers are nuns or priests, or mostly nuns. And you kind of learn about spirituality. You get a prayer book, but in this prayer book, we didn't actually know how to use it properly. We'd roll it up and hit each other on the head with the prayer book instead of using it in a spiritual way. So it was not very helpful to me. In many ways, it was helpful because during Christmas time, I remember when I was young, I would think, oh, Christmas, this is a special time of year. Now, I knew there was something spiritual about Christmas, something really happy, something, let's just say, transcendental, beyond the modes of nature. But I couldn't figure out what it was, nor could I really experience it. And I was missing the real meaning of Christmas, but I knew something must be there. So that was something that I kind of went through. My mother was very supportive, very helpful. She was a single parent working. And my grandmother also very supportive. But what happened is when I was a little bit older, maybe 18, graduating from high school and starting college, one thing about college was that it kind of presented an atmosphere and environment where you're supposed to open up your mind. You're supposed to learn about the world. Yeah. You're supposed to learn a lot more than just sociology and history and mathematics. So that was really good for me. And I started finding a book on Buddhism. And I started following all the Buddhist practices. But after 6 or 8 months, I couldn't actually enter nirvana. So I kind of got tired of that. Then another man was teaching Aquarian meditation nearby the University of Houston. And he also taught mostly his version of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where you sit in silent meditation. And I tried that for about 6 or 8 months. And he was a good teacher, very handsome 45-year-old man. And again, this was a little bit separate from the university, but close by. And I tried to see the white light between my eyes, but I never could get there. So I was a little bit disappointed that I couldn't achieve what I was trying to achieve. And one student asked him one time, "What do you think about the Hare Krishna movement?" And he responded that because I had a little bit of idea there was a Hare Krishna movement, some idea. I'd seen a lady or a man on campus dressed differently with tilak, giving out prasadam, invitation to the Sunday feast. And at that time also, I got a chapati and vegetable at Galena Park in Houston. I think it's far east Houston near the Ship Channel area. And unknowns to me, prasadam maybe had some effect on me. It kind of might have reawakened something in me. And so the teacher responded, "Oh, the Hare Krishna movement, it is very beautiful. But I'm thinking that my process is the best." So the point about that is that in the 1970-71 period, generally the Hare Krishna movement was respected and honored by most people in the yoga meditation societies because it was, again, people were actually very serious as devotees who were all devotees. You had to leave your job, leave your education in most cases, live in the temple full time with other brahmacharis and brahmacharinis. And you had to learn not only spiritual life, but how to get along with the devotees. You had to completely separate yourself from the material life we had before. So it required a lot of dedication, a monastic, simplistic life. So even the people that were not devotees had some kind of respect and honor for the Hare Krishna movement, had a good reputation. There was no conflict. It's just that most of the different people had some idea they wanted to practice Ashtanga yoga, their own idea of kind of spiritual life. So in that way, the Hare Krishna movement was mostly respected, not by the materialistic people. They thought it was really strange to wear a dhoti and kurta and tilak and shaved head. It's just unbelievable anybody would do that.
So your Catholic upbringing, could you recognize things then? Because as you said, we had monks in the Hare Krishna movement. They shaved their heads. I think some monks shave their heads, don't they? I think at the back here, there's that area that they shave, and there's deity worship, isn't there, in the Catholic Church? So was there things there that you could recognize?
Maybe indirectly, subconsciously, possibly, but I didn't remember it that way.
No.
If you have some kind of Catholic bringing, because many devotees came from Catholic backgrounds, it kind of helped you understand, like you have deities in the temples. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not Krishna or Radharani, but it's like Mother Mary and Jesus. And you have pictures of different saints on the
saints as well,
stained glass windows of the churches. So the deity work, I think you're actually making a good point here. There was some kind of concept of maybe not deity worship, but at least a form, some theistic ways of expressing yourself. Because one time I went to a church in Mexico, and somehow or another I asked this minister, I said, "You're telling me this is a Christian church, but there's no pictures of Jesus, there's no pictures of Mary, there's no pictures of anything on the wall." And he says, "Oh, we're Protestant. We don't do that." Yeah. So it's different. It's different. So there was some background of deity worship, or let's just say the form of the saints, at least.
Yes, yes, and the fact that I suppose that God can actually be represented by a statue, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. What happened is when I was in Houston, a few things happened to me that were very unusual. Like I was riding on my motorcycle one time in West Houston, and a bird started flying close to me for a long, long distance, almost 3 or 4 or 5 feet away. And I thought that was very unusual. And I didn't know what to take of it, but I thought maybe something good is going to happen to me now. I just had a sensation that something good was happening to me. And maybe a few months, a year later, I met the devotees at University of Houston, lady giving out simply wonderfuls and invitations to the Sunday feast. So, and a few things happened like that that were, let's just say, auspicious or seemed to me to be something interesting or good.
Mm.
And so when I met devotees, it was a very, very different change of atmosphere, everything. When I first went to the Sunday feast, I wanted to kind of psychologically analyze the devotees because I couldn't really understand the philosophy. I wanted to see if all the devotees came from some kind of background, and I realized they all came from different backgrounds.
Mm.
Somebody was from Oregon, somebody was from Houston, somebody was from New York, somebody was from Chicago. And so I can understand that this is a different group of personalities who come together for spiritual life. And I realized the morning program, the whole working all day in different devotional services, evening program, created a type of a real full-time monastic atmosphere where you could really make advancement if you applied yourself. And so I tried applying myself as best I could, but after a few weeks, something unusual happened. A devotee came by from Los Angeles, and he was, let's just say, warning devotees, something like Paul Revere, that there was some kind of, let's just say, some kind of a conspiracy going on in Los Angeles, where a few devotees were trying to take over management or control or supervision of the other temples in America. And he didn't like that. And he wanted to just kind of tell the devotees that was taking place. But I didn't know too much about it, nor do I really know any details so much. But the temple president asked this devotee to leave. It was kind of like, and I hardly knew about it, but and I forgot about it for a long, long time, for many, many years. It wasn't important to me because I had my own efforts to attend the morning program, wake up early, and just take part in temple activities. It was very important for me to be focused because I have maybe ADHD or something. So I was just focused on the morning program, learning about Krishna consciousness. Because I had also left college, and my whole life was being dedicated to this. And I asked the devotees at the Sunday feast, is one of my main questions, what happens if somebody approaches bhakti yoga? And what happens if you aren't able to fulfill the process? What happens if you're not able to be completely successful at it? Because that's my previous experience. I tried things and I couldn't really achieve whatever success I was supposed to achieve. So the devotees at the Sunday feast answered all my questions, and I was very, very impressed that even new devotees could answer all the questions. It was just quite amazing. They said, well, in 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, if you're practicing for just a little while and you don't achieve success, you go to the heavenly planets. And that's good. Yeah. If you're long practice of yoga, you're born again into a family of Vaishnava devotees. And that's really, really fabulous. That's the real goal, because you want to be always with Krishna. Mm. And so they answered my questions, and I asked about karma. I asked about reincarnation, because you hear about these things in all the other disciplines, but you don't really can't put it all together. You can't connect the dots really. And that's why Bhagavad Gita was so beautiful with all the Bhaktivedanta purports, because they help connect all the dots. Mm. All the questions were answered in such a profound way that if you really wanted to kind of learn the whole thing, the answers were there. And then after a few...
You didn't find, when you was reading your Buddhist book to start with, did that leave you with more questions than were answered? But then you came to the devotees who, and Bhagavad Gita answered your questions. So do you find the book you read, the Buddhist book, did that leave you with more questions than answered?
I would say so. it whetted my appetite for curiosity.
Yeah.
And I knew there was something out there. I also read Autobiography of a Yogi.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that was, and that really impressed upon me that there's something going on here. I don't actually know what it is, but it's something fantastic. It's fabulous. It's beyond the world we know of. And because of that, I was interested in it. And I could see some of my fellow classmates, friends, or neighbors. They were not interested at all. It just couldn't quite penetrate their curiosity at all. But for myself, I knew something was going on and I wanted to figure it out because my life was a little bit incomplete, let's just say, not really satisfactory. And so all these different books and experiences I had and teachers helped me along the way in some way or another, even if it wasn't complete. So when I met the devotees, I could feel and understand that there's not only the philosophy here, but there's association of the devotees. There's, and I didn't know too much about Prabhupada at the beginning. But Srila Prabhupada later on, gradually as time went on, at that time they started Tulsi Puja and Guru Puja, just as I was a young devotee.
Yeah.
If I remember, it wasn't there before, but so it took some time when these parts of the morning program became more functional. So, my experience is very much like most devotees in America. You had some experience with meditation, yoga. You were curious. You knew something was going on that was fabulous and otherworldly. But so when you meet the devotees and you can put it all together, it's a satisfying experience. But I remember after about 2 or 3 weeks, I was in a Brahmacari ashram and something happened to me. I thought the devotees were like so spiritual people, they never got angry at each other.
Okay.
Well, one Brahmacari got angry at another Brahmacari. And I said, wow, I guess devotees get angry at each other also. It was just one of the kind of things you experience as you go along.
Yes, I agree. I remember when I first started going to the temple, I thought everyone at the temple was a pure devotee. Absolutely pure, on Prabhupada's level. So, it's something you do as a new devotee, I suppose. You just see it that way with rose-tinted glasses or whatever they say. Yes.
Yeah. It's just like one community member I spoke to about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. He said, I'm reading certain things in the books of certain devotees who are highly qualified spiritual teachers, are very, very advanced. So he also went to the temple and had different ideas that everybody was kind of like that or somebody was like that. And I said, you have to use a lot of discretion. Because even Prabhupada tells us that there's many, many people who are dressing up as tilak and devotees, but they're not devotees. So you have to be very much discretionary to understand. They have to be very, mindful to understand. Krishna consciousness is very difficult in Kali Yuga. There are certain statements that it's easy, and those statements are completely true. Chant the holy names, you take prasadam, associate with devotees, read the books, you attend festivals, you honor the great acharyas. So that is easy. Anybody can do that. But at the same time, because our minds are so conditioned to material things, sometimes somebody's conditioned of thinking, oh, I have to be this, I have to be that. So when they engage in a devotee association, there are different material inclinations gradually come out so that it creates some kind of a conflict or problem engaging in devotional service. So it's easy and it's very difficult. And both statements are true, and both statements need explanation in some cases.
How long were you at the temple before Prabhupada arrived? Because he used to visit Dallas quite frequently.
Well, I was always in Austin or Houston. So when Prabhupada did come to Dallas, it was maybe 4 times, maybe even somebody may say 5 times. So we would come from Austin when Prabhupada was here. So we would be brahmacharis. We would be doing sankirtan during the day. And sometimes we would be exhausted from our travel, and we were attending Prabhupada's Bhagavatam class, and sometimes we couldn't pay attention so carefully
Yeah.
because maybe the accent was there. It was hard to understand. You didn't have any like what do you have in the internet age where it's all written in words, whatever somebody's speaking. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like that. So you had to struggle to pay attention. And if there were 200 devotees at the temple and maybe 50 or 60 guests, somebody had to be far away and somebody had to be close. And so it was not easy to remember or follow along with it. It was a struggle.
What was your first impressions? Do you remember Prabhupada coming through the door or something? And did you have a first impression of him?
I remember one time in the evening darshans, again, there were so many devotees there. A darshan room, maybe 40 devotees can fit in there. Maybe 45.
Yes.
So you have 200 devotees that can't fit in the darshan room. So naturally, if you're one of the lesser important, you're probably going to be outside most of the time.
Yes.
So I remember that one time I got to be in the darshan room, and we were Brahmacharis again, visiting from Austin, and a lot of my memories are just not very clear. That's why some of the devotees helped me in describing Prabhupada's his installing Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji. Yeah. That was a very grand thing. It was very great, wonderful deities. And there were all these Gurukula children there, maybe, I don't know, 100 at the time, maybe 75 or 100. Wow. And he wanted the deities to be installed very quickly because he was not going to be there for very long. So when he asked the devotees to get ready and preparations were to be made, naturally the devotees had to do a whole lot of preparations because normally you need 7 outfits to install Radha Krishna deities. But they only had 1 outfit, and it was made up very quickly with, I don't even remember, maybe straw and burlap, just very, very not regular materials at all. And they had to make an altar, a Formica altar, just something that would be an altar. And they had to gather things. And when one devotee came back in a U-Haul truck, bringing Kalachandji from New York, this is only a few days before the installation was to take place. They opened up the deity box, and the straw was all over Kalachandji's body and face and some kind of sticky substance. Oh. So it was mostly ladies were pujaris back then, especially taking care of the deities in this case. And it was Mother Janava Mataji, Ichamati Mataji, and a few others. And they didn't know what to do. They said, you can't install the deities like this with all the sticky all over the body and straw. And so some of the devotees, one devotee described that sometimes back in those days, we used to use extra efforts of over endeavor and try to do things so perfectly that we ended up making a mess of things. And these are great ladies, 2 or 3-year-old pujaris, very experienced devotees, but not very experienced completely. So they tried taking off all the sticky substance, and they ended using some solvents. And some of the solvents took off some of Kalachandji's paint. And it was, I'm making a long story very, very short. They had a great challenge, and they asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, we've called Los Angeles, going to ask this devotee Bharadwaj what to do. And Prabhupada said, what? I'm your spiritual master, and here I'm right in front of you. Who is this Bharadwaj? So you had these dramas going on. The ladies were not sleeping for 2 or 3 days trying to solve this problem. Yeah. And there was a Sunday, they went on to different stores to try to find these different kind of maybe enamel paints. But in Texas, they had blue laws back then where the stores were required to close it, I don't know, very early on Sundays. So they had a challenge to try to get these proper kind of paints that were everybody agreed upon. And when they put the paints on, they put the fans on, and the paints wouldn't dry. It was still sticky after 8 or 9 hours. So the devotees said, well, let's try to put some kind of heat or some kind of different ways they tried to make the atmosphere where the paints were dry. And finally, the paints were about maybe 98% dry. And they said, Prabhupada, we're ready for the installation. Just a little bit of Kalachanji's, I forget, feet or hands weren't quite dry. And Prabhupada said, okay, we'll do the installation. So it gets fine.
Yeah.
So again, I'm making a long story, which has a lot of beautiful, because the devotees were like totally emotionally, tragically despondent about not pleasing Prabhupada. And if they couldn't sleep, that wasn't a big thing, but they wanted to do their service to where it was satisfying and they could install the deities. And a couple of days earlier, Prabhupada heard that there was some kind of problems with the deities. And he said, pack my bags. I'm leaving now. And so maybe the temple president, GBC, were walking with Prabhupada in the morning. So he was upset at certain things that were taking place. He was either not being consulted or devotees were tampering with the deities in an improper way. And so there was kind of some emotions going up and down. So naturally, when some devotees heard that Prabhupada was upset, they became more despondent that, oh, my spiritual life is ruined. And again, these ladies were very great pujaris, and they were dedicated and fixed in their mind. They wanted to do good, proper service. And they knew how important deity worship was. You know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the way we treat him as a deity is the same way we're treating Krishna as a person, because Krishna is the deity. Krishna is a person. And so again, I'm making this story to be where in the end it was very happy, and the deities were installed. Prabhupada did the first Artik. And this is shown in my book. It's called Srila Prabhupada. No, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada's Texas Presence. And again, this is what happened is we had come back from Fiji about 6 years ago. And if we were there for more than 3 months, so when I came back to Dallas, I didn't have any service. So I went to look for my storage shed, and I found all these published manuscripts, unpublished manuscripts, all these different writings and books and chapters, and I started reading through these things and saying, wow. And again, I didn't have anything else to do. So in the afternoon, I would start writing articles about what I had read with different quotes, and I had no idea that this may turn into a project, but it did. And when it turned into a project, maybe 6 months or 8 months later, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So one devotee in Florida said, if you don't make this into a book, nobody else will. This is the history of Prabhupada and Radhakala Chanji. And they said, you have to ask some Gurukula students who were there to give their input, because it was the first Gurukula. And a lot of people want to know what happened in Gurukula, how did it start? And Prabhupada was being blamed for a lot of the child abuse that took place. So one of the themes of my book was that Prabhupada was not to be blamed, because he was in Africa, he was in India, he was in Australia, and devotees from Dallas or other temples would write him letters. And when they wrote these letters to him, they would explain sometimes really horrible things were happening. And Prabhupada would explain back in these letters what to do. You're not supposed to beat children, give them chapatis and rice and dal and vegetables. So many letters were exchanged. But the devotees were very inexperienced. And some of the devotees had anger problems. And so, for so many reasons, it was taken out on the children. And when you're a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid and you're not treated well, you don't understand how or why. But that was also part of my book. And when I came to Dallas one time, I remember, because we take showers in the morning at 4 o'clock. And one of the devotees was saying to the children, oh, you're in Maya, such and such, just take your cold shower. And I didn't think too much of it, but I can imagine for the children, it was difficult. So that was also part of what my experience was. Mostly my experience coming to Dallas as a guest from Austin or Houston was you'd hear at 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe 10 o'clock in the morning after Prashadam, beautiful melodious chanting of Brahma Samhita or Bhagavad Gita from the children. It was like beautiful and melodious. They would chant the verses of chapter 1, chapter 2, and I could understand the children really like kind of singing and chanting. It was one of the more happy activities. It's a way they could use their intelligence. And this was during the times where kind of Sanskrit was sometimes emphasized, but then later on it was de-emphasized. And there was just kind of more of a regular curriculum of reading, writing, arithmetic was presented in Gurukula. And again, this was where everybody, Brahmachari, Brahmacharini, Temple president, children, you had like a 24-hour schedule. And you wake up in the morning, you go through the morning program, then different devotees would have their services for 7, 8, 9 hours. And then in the evening, there was a 6:30 artik. So it was a very, very disciplined situation. And all the devotees who were fitting into the discipline gradually did well in their devotional service.
Yes.
And those who couldn't fit into it gradually had some problems or went away, or it just didn't work out so well for everyone. But that's kind of a part of that part. Thank you, Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Do you remember how you felt when you got the news of Prabhupada passing away?
Okay, I was in Houston at the time. Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu was the temple president. And I was with 3 or 4 devotees. We had just come back from the airport. We come back in a van. And Lakshmi Narayan came out and greeted us and told us that Prabhupada had left his body, passed away. So it was very, very, a lot of devotees took it in a different way. Everyone loved Prabhupada, and we all knew he'd been having some kind of illness for 8 or 9, 10 months. And 2 or 3 times during these 8 or 9 months, there was 3 or 4 or 5 devotees, or maybe more, who would be assigned to 24-hour kirtan. This is a very important thing that happened in 1977. And it happened, as I remember, 2 or 3 or 4 times that news came from India. Prabhupada had a downturn in his health. He's asked everybody to do 24-hour kirtan. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I took part very much in the 24-hour kirtan, because the brahmacharis were usually going out on Sankirtan, collecting donations, promoting book distribution at the airport. And but the 24-hour kirtan was beautiful because it helped all the devotees becoming more immersed in the holy name. And also it helped us remember that Srila Prabhupada was very ill, that we were supposed to have some great loving attachment to him, because he was giving us all this morning program, giving us all the books, giving us transcendental knowledge, removing sins from our hearts when you take formal initiation. And Prabhupada was everything to us. But at the same time, different devotees had various kind of emotional situations when they heard Prabhupada passed away. Mostly like in Los Angeles, where devotees were crying, weeping, falling on the floor, very, very emotional.
Yes.
But for myself, I was not quite that emotional. I thought to myself, wow, I knew Prabhupada's passing would be, let's just say, a challenge for all the devotees. A great challenge, because he was holding things together in such a way that probably no one else could hold things together. Mm-hmm. And but I thought to myself, wow, Prabhupada is not here anymore physically. What is going to happen? But I depended totally upon the temple activities, morning program, temple administration, because this is how we got our food, our prasadam. This is how we got the morning program. This is how we had a place to sleep at night. This is how we had devotee association. So all these ingredients of spiritual life, the Bhagavatam readings, Bhagavad Gita, devotee association, all of that was coming there because we had a temple, and that temple was part of Prabhupada's worldwide organization. And so we realized how things may change after Prabhupada's passing away, but we all, at least for myself, became very determined to continue my services before, because I had no other place to go. I had nothing else to think of. It was just like, there's no place to go, nothing else to do. Continue our progress in Krishna consciousness, just try our best to maintain everything.
Yes.
And Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu also told the devotees the same thing too, that we have to continue our service, Prabhupada's passing, physical passing, is not really any fundamental difference to us. We're still distributing his books, still receiving transcendental knowledge from him. In his physical absence, as we're learning now in discussions all around the world right now in 2025, his physical absence is not that very important, because his presence in transcendental knowledge, in the books, in the deity worship, the Prabhupada, in devotee association is so important. Just like right now, whenever we speak about Prabhupada, he could also be present at the same location. Yeah. He has these powers, not the super soul, but he has special powers to be present, whereas devotees are honoring him. So his physical presence is, let's just say, important, but his transcendental presence without the physical body is most important.
Mm. What has been your inspiration over the years to keep on with your Krishna consciousness when, since Prabhupada has passed away? What has been your inspiration, do you think, over these years?
Well, probably a number of things. I also like reading Prabhupada's books. I do that daily, chanting 16 rounds. And from those activities, we get inspiration. As a family, we started off with no money for many, many years, just kind of working for the temple, being supported in that way. And then we started off having almost no money. We bought a house. So my inspiration was that I had to support my family. And I knew I wasn't very good at making money. I wasn't very talented in so many ways. So I always tried to save money. If I made $100, I would try to save $20 of it, no matter what. So I was inspired because just the situations Krishna put me in. I had children, I had a wife, I had a family, I had a house. And I knew that Krishna consciousness was the most important thing. But besides hearing and chanting, you also have to take care of material things also, like paying taxes, seeing the doctor, cleaning your home, so many different things. So my inspiration has been so many, many things all together. And it was in school, because I studied world history, American history, Texas history, is that the reason why history is there is part of education, is so that we as current people can learn from the past mistakes. You study history so that you can learn from what happened in the past, so that we don't repeat those mistakes. So I've always thought it very important as devotees to have recordings, books, whatever, of devotee history, Vaishnava history, Prabhupada's mission, so that we could learn from the mistakes of the past and not make the same mistakes again. Just like after Lord Chaitanya was here, 100 years later, the whole Vaishnava society had gone into about 13 different groups. Ala, Bala, Kartabaj, Niradesh, Sani Sahajya. And these groups are described as being chanting Hare Krishna in some cases, but not chanting purely. And the whole kind of philosophy and purity of Lord Chaitanya's mission had been dissolved into something material. So, and the same thing happened after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta departed. His mission kind of faltered a whole lot. And after Prabhupada left, his mission also faltered in so many ways, and up until today. So I thought history was so important. And that's kind of one of the motivations or inspirations why Krishna forced me to write this Prabhupada's presence in Texas. I didn't really want to do it because it was hard for me and it wasn't natural for me, but I was almost forced by Krishna to do it. And one devotee, as I mentioned before, told me, if you don't write this, nobody else will. And there's a lot of quotes also from other devotees. Because what happened is, just when the technology interrupted, was that I was walking back home one day around year 2000, and one of my neighbors was telling me that these outside people are saying that Prabhupada was, let's just say, mistreated back in 1977. So I thought to myself, how bizarre. And it kind of reflected back what happened to me when I was a new Brahmacari after a few weeks, that someone was coming around the temples, visiting all the southern temples, describing how there was some kind of conspiracy to take over the temples, create private ownership, something like that. So I had in my mind that something, strange or unfavorable could happen even amongst the devotees. And so it's just kind of, and I also felt like an inspiration to try to find out what really happened, what is written, why did this devotee say this? And it's because we hear so many rumors, but actually we don't know what is the fact. So now we have two big 950 plus page ISKCON history books, and they're available for the devotees to learn so that we don't make the same mistakes again. But what happens is, especially on my friends who did the CPO office, Child Protection Office, they say over and over again, if someone is being punished for child abuse, and the punishments are not very severe. You can't give class for 2 years. You can't do something for a couple of years. You can't associate with children. It's not very severe punishments. Mm-hmm. No one has ever been told you can never take prasad the rest of your life. No one has ever been told you cannot chant Hare Krishna anymore. No one has had any severe punishment at all, except maybe a few went to prison because they were somebody called the police. But so my point is that a lot of times there's some kind of child abuse goes on, like thousands of cases around the world. Someone will say, "Wait a minute, you can't punish this person. He is my friend." And in the writing of the history books, somebody else says, "Wait a minute, this is my superior, my friend. You can't say this about them in the history books, even if it's true." Mm-hmm. So we have this kind of a conflict going on.
Yes,
I explained this in my book, that if American historians were to say, we don't want to have any record of the American Indians whatsoever, no record of Indians being treated poorly. We just want to wipe them from the history books and talk about only the American settlers coming from Europe. Mm. And somebody may say, well, that's okay. It'll make things peaceful. But on the other hand, if we neglect the American Indians, and that they were here before anybody else, and how they were mistreated in some ways, and the wars went on, if we don't record the history properly, it's a bad sign for the current people, the people who write history books. We should actually learn history completely and totally, so that we don't disrespect any certain ethnic group, or so that we're just fair and honest and truthful, so that people can really learn from the past in such a way so we don't make the same mistakes.
Yes, because coming from the southern states, you're in Texas, they're trying to get rid of all the record of the old Confederate generals, taking down their statues and everything, rewriting the history as if the Confederacy, I don't want to be political here, but again, they're changing history by trying to cut the Confederacy out of the history books by getting rid of all that history that the South has.
That could be a good example. Maybe you're in Texas or Dallas. Over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of statues taken down. And my granddaughter's school was renamed because it was named after one of the Confederate generals.
Yes.
Now it's just called Mockingbird Elementary School, like the street is on Mockingbird.
Mockingbird, yeah.
And I have kind of unusual feelings about that. I never thought about it quite the way you expressed it, but it's true. If in other words, people in America may be good natured people, but they had this government policy where you could keep somebody as a slave as long as you didn't kill them. If you just gave them enough food, a place to sleep, you could brand their body, or they were your slave for the rest of your life, and you could sell them if you didn't like them to somebody else. And but we could understand how government policies cause people who are to kind of act very strangely in some ways, to mistreat the slaves. Mm-hmm. And then gradually the government policy came from the northern states that we don't want to have slavery anymore because there was too many abuses. Probably the whole thing was abusive to start with, that you're not supposed to sell other humans. Mm. Everybody is a spirit soul equally, even though the body is different.
That's right.
So and that's a good example, actually. Yeah, if somebody wants to rewrite history, or Prabhupada gives the example, if somebody gives an interpretation of the Vedic literatures, that interpretation is done according to what one wants to do. For example, in the stories of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Gopinath Acharya, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is said that there are 4 types of evidence: historical references, hypothesis, direct experience, but the most important experience, the most important evidence is a Vedic knowledge, what's actually written in the Vedas. So the point here is that, we should actually, I've gotten off point, sorry.
No, that's right. No, we're talking about rewriting history, and part of the reasons of doing these interviews is to try and get your history, your perspective, what you think of ISKCON at this time in your life and through your youth and everything, because it's going to be different in the future. Devotees' stories are different, their experiences are different. So we're trying to capture all that for the historical record, whether it's good, the bad, and the ugly.
See, usually there's 2 types of devotees who write books. One type of devotee writing books is completely sanitized. You're not saying anything about anybody that anybody could object about. And that has its own kind of beauty or readership. And the other types of devotees want to write history, whether it's New Vrindavan, Dallas, Europe, India, and they include so many things which somebody's going to point out. You can't put that in the history book. That's my friend. You can't punish this child abuser. He's my friend. So this has been going on for the last 20, 30, 40 years. This kind of attempt to rewrite history, and in many cases to improperly describe what Prabhupada's challenges were. Just to give an example.
Yeah, give an example.
When Prabhupada was in New York City, after about a year or 2, he had written his Bhagavad Gita, and somebody took his Bhagavad Gita to Macmillan Publishers, and the devotee said to Macmillan, "Here's my Bhagavad Gita. I want you to publish my Bhagavad Gita." But it was Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. So these were like challenges. Prabhupada had to work with people who were not on the same page with him in many ways. And then like the situation that happened in Los Angeles, that may be the same, but Prabhupada had to disband the GBC because the GBC had a meeting without him. It was making all these very strange resolutions, which were really, really bad. So Prabhupada said, from now on, nobody should listen to the GBC. They're disbanded. Every temple president has his own authority. Again, this changed after some time, but this is like where dedicated devotees got together and did things which were very counterproductive and disrespectful and disobedient. And then in 1976, devotees started changing the Upanishad in different books. And Prabhupada, the devotee was reading Upanishad at Prabhupada in India, and he said, "Wait a minute, I didn't write that." And they found out that there were hundreds of changes to Upanishad, and Prabhupada said, "From now on, go publish to the original way."
Yes.
And the same with the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada really, really liked all those 50 or so pictures in the Bhagavad Gita. 1972 Macmillan edition. And if you look at those pictures, it helps you understand what is being described in various verses. To me, the pictures are very, very valuable. Most people are picture people, and I'm a photo person.
And you used to sell artwork, so you're definitely a picture person.
Yeah, it shows some modes of material nature. Somebody's operating some puppets, and so it helps you understand that we're being forced by the modes of nature to act in certain ways because we're in those modes. And so then in 1977, Prabhupada wrote a very important letter after days and days of meetings and discussions to send this out to all the temple presidents. But the leading secretary said, "Well, we're not going to send this out to all the temple presidents because we think it's misleading." So they didn't send it out.
Yes.
Then later on, a few months later, Prabhupada said, "I want all my disciples to come visit me." And some of the devotees got together and started meeting together. And they said, "Go back to Los Angeles and tell the devotees not to come." So you had all these conflicts going on.
Conflicts going on. Yes, yeah. Prabhupada had a lot to deal with, didn't he? He was so patient and tolerant, I think, with a lot of his disciples, because they were just, because they weren't pure heart at that time. They were still young men. Most of them were young men.
Mhm.
Most of the young, I mean, the senior devotees had only been with Prabhupada 12 years when he passed away.
Mhm.
And that is no time at all, is it, to really change and mature
Mhm.
life. So I suppose he was like the grandfather dealing with his unruly grandchildren.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yes, yes. And so there were many more instances. I've just mentioned a couple that come to
Yeah.
mind. And so if people could understand the history of what happened in 1977, the great challenges that Prabhupada had,
Mhm.
it helps us to understand what happened after that. That's when, if you don't understand really what
Mhm.
happened, the last, with the book changes and so many other changes, because in Prabhupada's will, he said, he stated there like a no change policy in his will.
Mm.
And so if you understand the history, it helps us to understand the present. And that's why the devotees were saying, oh, don't read the ISKCON history books. Stay away from that. How are they going to have any empowerment from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? If anyway, that's just my little contribution there. That inspired me because I think history is very important. And now in year 2025, there are many Zoom programs going on around the world, many different Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam discussions. And each of these you'll find a little bit different.
Mhm.
And many times, if you go to like many places where devotees are, if you bring up these questions, I have questions about the books. I want an original book. I have questions about such and such. A lot of times you're not welcome and you're just shown the door. So we have a difficult time.
Yes, yes, some growing pains as
Mm-hmm.
it happens. And I mean, I don't know. I like the original books, and I have the original book, and we tend to read the original books. But I'm quite happy not to cause waves and to accept the edited versions. Um, Also, because I do some editing as well, and I edit my spiritual masters books, and so I know that books do have to be edited. Even if it's just that there's some grammatical errors or some typos,
Mm-hmm.
in things. So they have to
Mm-hmm.
be changed anyway, but the meaning doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that? But then again, some devotees have expressed to me that they like reading Prabhupada's original books because his English was very Indian, an Indian English. So he had, and from that time, from the 60s, well, he went to college and everything in the 20s. And so his English is a very old style of English, which is very, it's attractive, isn't it? It's quite cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cute, the way he expresses himself sometimes, certain words he uses that come from that time when he learned English. I like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like I like that in the original books.
There's the 1962 edition of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Delhi edition, published in Delhi.
Hmm. Yeah.
Nobody had edited the books except Srila Prabhupada himself. And some of the devotees have those and like to read those. They're very much exactly as you have described, the kind of Indian versions of English, so to speak. And it has beautiful words. But
Mm.
then when Hayagriva edited the books in 1970, I don't know,
Mm.
76 and 77, he created his own flavor of writing, and Prabhupada liked it. This
Mm.
old English kind of not Indian English, but old English, flowing, poetic, beautiful descriptions that kind of created just a kind of a wonderful, sensational way to express English.
Mm.
And Prabhupada liked that a whole lot. He thought High Agreement did not change the meaning, but he made it more presentable to the American public, so to speak.
Yes, yes. And language, and we've seen over the years how language has changed.
Mhm.
I saw something recently where they were just adding some new words into the Oxford Cambridge dictionary. I'd never heard of them, but these are words that young people
Mhm. Yeah.
nowadays, youngsters, the teenagers, the 20-year olds are using these words that I've never heard of, and I don't
Mhm.
understand it at all. So I suppose there is also you can also say that the books have to be updated to fit the new language, provided the meaning is not being lost. Do you think? Would you agree with that or that
Well,
opinion?
I hear your explanation of it. Uh, Actually, Prabhupada was upset with so many changes be taking place. He would quite often say, "Go back to the original way," because the
Yeah.
devotees started tampering with one thing,
Mm.
it became a problem. So I kind of like the original books, 1972 edition of Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah.
personally. All 50 pictures. I
Yes.
was in India about 2 months ago, and I saw this one Bhagavad Gita. It was hardback. It was a very thick book, Bhagavad Gita, in Karnataka language, Kannada. And it only had about 10 pictures in it, 12 pictures. And I said, wow, this is and I knew it was not anything near the original version, but to have only 10 pictures when there was 50 before, which were all beautiful and wonderful. And I know that the pictures, color pictures, it increases the cost of publishing.
Yes.
But I didn't like the book at all. It had an orange cover on it, and it didn't seem very proper to me. That's just kind of my experience. It was big, thick, beautiful, hardback book,
Mm.
but it was and a lot of the changes in some cases or make philosophical changes also. So that's kind of my personal opinion.
No, that's fine. Thank you, because we're here to pick up your opinions. You're here to express them. So that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. So, what else, when you look back over these years, is there anything that stands out in your mind over these last 50 years as a devotee, or your last sort of like 70 odd years in this body? Is
Well,
there anything that stands out for you over that time?
see, every day that goes by, I think about why aren't we living away from the cities, growing our own food?
Oh, yes. Yeah, because your
Krishna's,
wife has a
Krishna,
wonderful garden there. You're
yeah,
in
yeah.
the city, downtown Dallas, and she's got a beautiful garden. She grows all your vegetables.
The Prabhupada, my first initiation letter, when it came to Houston, he wrote, I want you to do attend the morning program, do Sankirtan every day, Prabhupada preaching activities. So this is kind of the duty I've been giving. And if I'm forced to live in a city for right now, it's just what the kind of my situation I'm forced to be in. And if we go out and buy some property out in the country, we'll be kind of by ourselves, growing our own food. And we're more like social devotees. We like, so it's a little difficult for me. But the next few years, it looks like things may get really, really bad. Devotees will be forced to leave the cities. But I do think about Varnashram Dharma. I think about self-sufficiency. Just like I was speaking to devotees in Tennessee a few weeks ago.
Yes.
They were reviewing what's happened over the last 50 years there.
Yes.
In 1978, there was 50 devotees. In 1980, there was 30 devotees. And now there's only 3. And
Yes.
they were explaining to me that what happened is when devotees get together on a farm project, they have to really be surrendered and really work together for the benefit of the whole project as part of Prabhupada's mission. But if devotees can't get together, can't function as a unit, can't help and love each other and be a part of a farm project, it doesn't work. And that's what's happened every few years. Devotees just can't work together and associate together. And that's what he was telling me. I think it was Gayatri Prabhu I was talking to.
Probably.
And so it was kind of a fun listening to him.
Yeah.
And he explained to me some of the situations that have happened, good and bad. And it's kind of like that. It's very hard because right now so many devotees have been part of some project. Then somebody else takes over and gets rid of them. And then they say things happen over and over again. So if you put your heart into something, if you don't actually own the land and own the whole thing, people are scared to do anything in some cases. So that's why here we are in year 2025. We don't have any really, except for like I was at New Vrindavan a year and a half ago. They have a cow barn, cow shelters. They milk the cows. But except for a few places, it's hard to have any really self-sufficiency, growing your own food. We've been to some of the farms here locally in Texas. And one farm that they have the dirt is like black dirt, is like clay. And when you plant something in it, except for maybe radishes or cotton, it becomes like cement. Devotee explained that to me. I was shocked. Just a few days ago, I was speaking over the phone, and the devotee said it becomes cement. And other devotees working by themselves, and other families working by themselves. So you have all these, 5 or 10 or 40 acre projects, but it's not really growing your own food. It's not simple living. It's not self-sufficiency. And so what impacts me is that it's devotees, like say all the devotees in North America, for example, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars in different devotees' accounts, millions and millions here and there. Some devotee has, just so much. But so it's very hard to work together because of all the things I've mentioned in the previous 30 minutes.
Yes, definitely in United States and the Western countries, I think it's very difficult for us to be. I don't think there's anyone there who's self-sufficient, because it's not just growing all your own food and protecting the cows. You should also be weaving your own cloth and making your own furniture and all these things, your own housing from sustainable, and so we're not there yet, are we? I'm hoping that devotees in the future will be watching this and say, "Oh, we're doing it now," because we really hope they are doing it.
Yeah.
Years in the future.
For myself, I'm not a complainer. I don't like to whine and complain about different things. If something needs to be done, I have to go out and do it as best I can. But we're all getting old. And usually for a farm, like one devotee told me also in East Texas, he said, for a farm, you need young, strong men. And so it's not something that older people, 75 years old, can easily go out and start something. So we're kind of depending upon Krishna. We don't want to be complaining, but Krishna is giving all of us an opportunity to learn about, because somebody asked Prabhupada, or Prabhupada asked the question, how did Vrindavan temple start, the Krishna Balaram temple? I'm trying, maybe my memory is wrong, but there was a question, how did the whole thing start? And Prabhupada answered the question. It started with an idea. Nobody buying land, nobody moving any bricks and mortar here and there. It started with an idea.
Yes.
So if you start off with an idea, that's really how things begin. And then you try to examine, how can this idea take step 2 and step 3 and become progressive? So I think we'll have to see how things take, because East Texas, close by here, is some of the best place to have a temple or a farm, grow your own food, to live self-sufficiently. And historically, the reason why people didn't come to Texas was because it was very, very, very hot here in the summertime, especially in Dallas, and there was no air conditioning way back then. It was just really hot here in Texas. People would rather live in Carolina, Virginia, Massachusetts, New York, because they could light a fire when it got cold. If it was hot, you just die practically.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then you could come to Texas for the winter time.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, so that's why Texas was very slow to develop.
Really?
In the 1600s, 1700s,
Yeah.
people lived on the East Coast because it was kind of mild weather.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they made friends with the American Indians mostly.
Well, thank you, Prabhu. I really appreciate and I've enjoyed this conversation. Before we leave, is there anything else you wanted to express?
Well, my wife is saying in the other room, we all have to pray to Krishna.
Yes, definitely. She's such
Yeah,
a nice devotee.
I think your devotional service is wonderful. The fact that you're determined to do it is like absolutely wonderful. The fact that you want to interview devotees who may not be there for the Prabhupada Memory Series, or some that are for the Prabhupada Memory Series, who would like to have an interview with you. I think it's really important how you're asking questions and prompting devotees to respond creates a whole, not a monologue, but a dialogue. And I think it's a wonderful way to use Krishna's technology, which he's given us. And thank you very much for allowing me to come. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Take care to yourself and your wife and your family.
Thank you. All glories to Prabhupada. Haribol.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.